Welcome to Made in Montgomery. I'm your host, Rashai Sahalu. There is no shortage of business ideas in Montgomery County. In this edition, we'll take you to 3 businesses that each offer unique and innovative products and services that cater to the specific needs of our community. We start out in Rockville with a business that invented a revolutionary new product that helps babies breathe more easily. They say necessity is the mother of invention.
The countless sleepless nights at her not being able to breathe very well throughout the night.
Nina Farzin would convert her worries about her baby's breathing issues due to clogged nostrils into something a bit more productive.
We would just, she would wake up and spend the rest of the night trying to comfort her. I knew what was on the market, and it didn't work for us.
Nina used her background as a pharmacist combined with her entrepreneurial spirit to develop a unique product that would become better known as the Better Booger Picker Tool for babies.
Fast forward to when my nephew was born. I remember us visiting him, and my sister-in-law turned around to me and said, "Oh my God, he's not sleeping through the night. He's got these boogers." That was my aha moment. I turned around to my husband and I said, "I'm bringing this product to market."
She took a leap of faith, quit her full-time job, and started her business with money from her savings.
My goal at that point was, okay, if I had 50 moms that would love this product, I'm good. I presented this product. I didn't know how much to sell it for. And then all of a sudden, like an hour or two into the meeting, I had this line of parents just, eager to purchase this product because it was ridiculous that you made a booger tool. It wasn't that sexy to talk about.
The Bear Pair from Oogie Bear has all the tools you need to clean out your baby's nose and ears.
The product, promoted as a device to clear a baby's nasal passages of mucus and ear canals of wax, would go on to exceed Nina's expectation of grabbing more than 50 moms' attention to making $15 million in revenue. When Nina, along with her husband Sina, took Oogie Bear to Shark Tank in season 14.
Hi Sharks, my name is Nina Farzin.
And I'm her husband, Sina Farzin.
They walked out with a $600,000 deal that would shake things up for their small Rockville-based business.
It was probably top 5 experiences of my lifetime. I love what happened on Shark Tank because I accidentally coined myself as an accidental entrepreneur. And that's exactly what it was. I did not really seek out and say, here's my business plan. This is how much I need.
Our babies suffered from boogers. Yes, boogers.
The journey on Shark Tank opened up an avenue that, you don't have to say, here's a plan, here's what I'm going to do. Sometimes if you have a great product, you just start selling it, and the rest just kind of unfolds.
Councilmember Lorianne Sales stopped by to learn more about this Montgomery County-based small family-run business.
Can you tell me the difference between these boxes and these look like care packages?
What does a new parent need? So we put new parent boxes together and gift boxes that people can gift. It was our #1 seller. We couldn't keep it in stock. We actually sold out and we had a waiting list.
For Nina, keeping her business closer to home was really important.
So is this...
That was our Christmas card this year.
Oh, I love it.
Those are my girls.
Okay.
She is the reason why we got the ears involved, because we're like, okay, what else can we do with this? We all struggle with balances of how we, try to balance our home life with our work life, and Montgomery County has actually offered that. We've been able to have a flex space here, and we were able to fulfill all the orders for Shark Tank, where we have our inventory as well as the offices. Miki here is my social media superstar, and then be able to go home and not that far away, be able to be mom and wife, and be able to take care of the more important things, right? We are the best booger picker on the market. I think Oogie Bear is a family of smart baby products, and we want to maintain that focus and bring products that are just going to help mom and dad. We want to make life easier. It's amazing.
Oogie Bear products are available at several local stores that carry baby items, Amazon, and of course, the Oogie Bear website itself. In recent years, there has been a growing interest in black and white film photography. We found a local photography studio in Silver Spring.
Permit, and then you get a new construction permit. It also triggers some consumer protections in terms of warranties. So I do want to just point to the text itself. in the packet at circle 3. We're removing the old definition, which was, and we're now saying demolish means to tear down or destroy an entire building or structure, or 67% or more of the first-story exterior walls of a one-family or two-family dwelling unit. Demolish includes the conversion of an exterior wall into an interior wall. Basement and cellar walls are not considered exterior walls. And remove will mean moving a building or structure substantially intact from within a site. I should also mention that we do have a proposed amendment from Councilmember Balcom. When this bill was originally introduced, it was introduced as an expedited bill. And the impact of that is that it takes effect immediately. But you also, in order for a bill to be considered expedited, you also have to, find that there's an immediate need for it. And so with the passage of time, and I've checked in with DPS, there's no objection to having it reclassified. The original sponsors were no longer on the council, and it took a while before we had a new sponsor, and it's been revived. DPS assures me that there are no concerns around the reclassification and allowing a 91-day window. I did check in with Mr. Mast about whether we should be worrying about a transition clause. They're satisfied that 91 days is sufficient time for the turnaround. We had a discussion about what happens to applications that are in the pipeline and so on, and I'll actually defer to them to address that in greater detail. But I would like to call upon, with the chair's permission, I would like to turn it over to DPS to get into a bit more detail about what led to this. Do you want?
Good afternoon. My name is George Muste. I'm the Division Chief for Residential Construction and Fire Code Compliance Division at the Department of Permitting Services. Thank you for having us. I think we have an old existing issue with these projects where we have extensive demolition happening in the homes. When you have an extensive demolition of the existing house, there's a probability that you may not obtain the right permits, and you may not, therefore, ensure adequate protection for the environment. You do not protect the neighbors. You do not protect the consumer. So the day language, which we have in Chapter 827.2, allows an applicant to demolish the entire structure or building with the exception of a wall or a facade. So that language is very confusing and hard to interpret. We tried many times for many years to figure out what does it mean. The definition of wall is absent from the code, it's absent from the legislation. Also, the definition of facade is missing. So a person could obtain a permit from DPS for an alteration, a major alteration or renovation, without obtaining a permit for demolition by leaving maybe 2 basement walls, actually 2 corners of a basement. At that point in time, the utilities, we do not know if they actually sealed off the utilities and kept them off safely. We do not know what happened with electrical power, what happened with the extermination process. There's no requirement for the applicant to fulfill if they reach that threshold. So we thought that, plus that they will get a permit for an additional alteration which requires a different license than required for a new home construction. They would require just the Maryland Home Improvement State license. And in doing so, they will proceed, they will build this major addition or renovation, and they will sell it as a new house. And when they do that, they will not have the obligations to fulfill under OCP to ensure consumer protection. They don't have to offer the warranties which are required there. Plus that they don't have the licenses, adequate licenses to apply for it. So in cooperation with OCP, for multiple years we tried to come up with something more adequate as we see it, and we agreed in consultation with the industry as well that the threshold can be moved up to whatever is specified today. So from demolishing everything to but leaving a wall, we think that 67%, if somebody demolishes extensively the home and they reach this threshold, they're moving 67% or more of the first story walls, exterior walls, above grade, then they need the demo permit. And so at that point in time, they will come to DPS, they will apply for a new house permit, which will address all the other concerns we have, including a major one, because on the new home permit, they would need also to apply for a sediment control permit that will also address the drainage issues from these lots. We have a lot of complaints when we issue permits which are new homes, which are not new homes, and then we get complaints from the neighbors that we have not addressed this. And we only moving to a new house permit will include obtaining a sediment control permit under which the water drainage will be addressed. So let me repeat again. If somebody has a house, and there are two major scenarios. You have a house built on a slab or on a frame floor above a basement. What's built above this floor we call superstructure. If somebody demolishes and removes a lot of this house and they leave only 1/3, less than 1/3 of the exterior walls of the dwelling unit, which doesn't include garages, if they leave only 1/3, they reach the threshold, and then they have to apply for a demolition permit. If they by construction they will include one of the exterior walls, remaining exterior walls, through the new construction, we will consider that remaining existing wall as not acceptable to be included in the 67%. And if they go, obviously they will have nothing to do with the basement or the slab on grade on which the house is built. If somebody reaches that level, obviously we have a problem. So in reaching this 67%, we did a lot of research, and I don't think there are many similar jurisdictions addressing this issue. All the permitting processes are different. We found that certain jurisdictions have 50% requirement. For example, in Edina, in Philadelphia, I think that's what I found out. And at that point in time, they deem a house that reaches this level of demolition as new homes. And we also believe from our practice, from our residential team of inspectors and plan reviewers, that this is an acceptable threshold. And after we reach this threshold, we need to go and have them apply for a new house permit. So we address all our concerns from a processing permitting point of view, from environmental concerns, water drainage, and hopefully licensing too from OCP. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Eric, do you want to follow up?
Just here to answer any questions. If you ever wanted an example of how something that's very, very simple becomes difficult to explain, this would be it. This is a very simple situation from the perspective of the Consumer Protection Office. We're simply here to fix a loophole that Montgomery County has had for over 10 years. And just to put it in very quick context, because I'm nowhere near as smart as George, so I would never even try to be. Here's how the two offices collaborate. When somebody wants to build a new home, they need to get a permit from the Department of Permitting Services. new home builders are licensed by the Office of Consumer Protection. That's why we're working together. And right now we have a loophole that's really a trick of the trade when somebody who wants to build a new home has found a way to make it look like they're not building a new home by interpreting the statute, which we really think is probably very clear, in a way that's creative, but not the way the statute says. And just very simply, they're misinterpreting the word entire. But in any case, it's simply a loophole, and we finally are happy to hopefully have it resolved.
Thank you very much. Do you have something else to add before I let council members ask their questions?
I did just want to draw the committee's attention to the impact statements that are summarized at pages 2 and 3 of the staff memo, and I'm happy to take any specific questions if the committee members have them, but I have nothing to add.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Councilmember Balkan.
Sure, thank you. And I have to say thank you to you for taking so much time with me to kind of walk through the bill. And this is a really important bill. Not only is it a consumer protection bill, but it really does, no pun intended, level the playing field, because most builders are doing this the proper way. Some builders are not, and that's just not fair for everybody concerned. So just as was stated, and it's a very simple bill. It basically changes the definition of demolish from the residential dwelling to the entire building. And the assumption in the past, the word entire was interpreted different ways, and a picture's worth 1,000 words. Some of these examples are pretty egregious. In the packet, you'll see a situation where 2 partial basement walls were kept and an entire a new home was built. And so there's two permitting issues. One is the demolition permit. Without the demolition permit, which requires disconnecting the utilities, providing pest control abatement, other environmental controls. Without that demolition permit, the builder doesn't have to do any of those things, and that's important for protection. But also then the new building permit. Someone who buys this home assumes they're buying a brand new home with all the remedies that go with buying a new home. But without a new building permit, you don't have a new home warranty, and that's a critical aspect to this. And this bill provides for both. It requires the demolition permit and requires the new building permit. Even though it's a very simple bill, just changing the definition of demolition, it took quite a while to have all my questions answered, so I appreciate that, and I'm assuming colleagues may have other questions. And also, I just wanted to mention that in the initial drafting of the bill, our prior council members and staff worked with MBIA, the Builders Association, and I went back to them to make sure I had an understanding. Their view was very similar to what I stated, that the majority of the builders are doing it correctly, and it really disadvantages those who are doing it right. And so I think that and they're in support of this bill. Thank you.
That was clearly stated, and I absolutely agree with every single word that you mentioned. Council President Glass.
Thank you. Excited for your first bill work session, Councilmember Balcom. Very good. And so I'm glad you have spent time trying to determine the definition of demolition. A number of years ago, I spent some time trying to figure out the same definition. Instead of thinking about it from the terms of demolition, I used the term tear down. And I introduced a bill to close loopholes regarding tear downs, because this is not the only loophole, to use Director Friedman's word, that exists. These older homes that are turned into larger, newer homes tend to have been built in the late 1940s. They average about 1,700 square feet. And as of 2 years ago, they sold for $700,000, only to be torn down or demolished by anyone's definition. Maybe not the legal definition in Montgomery County, but by any definition. And then when they're rebuilt, they're transformed from a 1,700 square foot home to 4,200 square feet and are more than doubled in their sales price. Those are the homes we're talking about. And so clearly we want the people who buy those homes to have all the protections and safeguards of any other new home, air quotes around new. And so I agree and support the legislation, but I want to raise the issue of loopholes that exist, because while these homes might be now considered new legally, they are also not treated as other new homes because they do not incur the same fee structure as other new homes. Maybe that's something that wants to be considered. Since we've updated the name, we've updated their classification, because if you buy a new home in Clarksburg or Germantown, there are fees that are associated with that, now that these are new homes. So do we know if there would be any development fees that might be associated with these homes because of the new classification?
No. If it's a demo rebuild, no. It's considered, there's no impact tax assessed.
Despite being considered new?
Yes. That's what's happening today with all the demo rebuilds.
So not all new homes will still be treated the same, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Do you have a follow-up?
Oh, no, I was just, George touched on it. I mean, there are exemptions in that requirement, and the tear down pretty much is one of those exemptions where they would not be required to pay those tax.
Yeah, the school impact tax and the transportation, they are exempted. That's a practice today. Obviously, things can change, or maybe somebody can read the legislation closer, because practice could then be changed. It depends. The interpretation today is what I just said, but you may read it totally different. Yes, sir.
We're talking about classifications, we're talking about loopholes, and I'm providing the full scope of both. That's all I'm doing. I'm not making any amendments. I'm not suggesting the resurrection of legislation that has sunsetted, but I think it is very important to raise those issues in this specific conversation.
I think you're absolutely correct, Council President Glass. From my perspective, this was very interesting coming in, because this issue I've dealt with in multi-jurisdictions that I've been in. So it's not unique to Montgomery County. This, again, the correct term is loophole, is a common practice. And I think it's our obligation to come up with these clarifications as this bill provides to ensure the protections, from a safety standpoint, from a consumer protection standpoint, because it bothers me when I see these, either legal or, illegal. That's usually when they choose not to get permits at all, and that's a whole different topic. But in this case, it's one of those unintended consequences, from the current language. It enables, a lot of possibilities where we can't fulfill our mission, to ensure the safety and as well as, consumer protection. So we want to reinforce that.
And last comment before I turn it back. In the previous conversations and the prior legislation, there was lots of conversation about what classifies. When does an older home become a newly rebuilt home? And you've set on a 67% standard. When more than 67% or more of the exterior walls are demolished, then it becomes a new home, right?
Yes. Then if you have a demolition permit, the assumption is that the whole thing disappears, so you build a new home. But we deem it as a new home, yes.
The alternative approach that was offered a few years ago was that when the square footage of the home doubles because of the rebuild.
Yes.
Recognizing that, according to the planning department, these homes that we're specifically talking about in this legislation are typically starting at 1,700 square feet and then go up when they're rebuilt to 4,200 square feet. So.
Yes, sir. And I think there were efforts to do that, but in appeals processes, we were told that we cannot restrict the size of the addition, and we cannot call it a new
Sure.
home.
No,
Yes.
of course. That's within their right. That's right. Okay, thank you.
I will mention that when I was on the planning board, the planning department, the planning board did a study on this issue, especially when we were talking about the growth and infrastructure policy that we passed in 2022, I believe. And this was a topic of conversation and the analysis, and honestly, it's been a while, and I wasn't expecting to talk about this here, but the analysis was that tear downs don't produce enough children. Like if you compare with turnovers, there's a big difference there. That's why it was not recommended. But this is, we can probably talk about this at some other points since you're not proposing an amendment, right? I hear that. So with that, do what, and then Lorian.
I just wanted to, the very critical part of this legislation is the demolition permit piece. So the issue of looking at square footage, if you're doubling or tripling square footage, in not tearing anything down, wouldn't be addressed in this bill. The importance of the critical importance of this bill is that demolition permit, because that's what kicks in the environmental requirements and the protection to the workers and neighbors. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, and I will just, we're going to have to talk about the growth policy again in a couple of years. So this will be a topic of conversation in the PHP committee. With that, Council Member Sales.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to my colleague, Councilmember Balcom, for reintroducing this legislation. I think it's timely as we look at how we're going to redevelop in light of Thrive. I did want to bring to your attention that I could not find the fiscal note on this legislation. And I know that in the packet it's not available yet, but I am also noticing that this is a pattern. And as we are reviewing legislation, knowing what the fiscal impact is going to be, especially when we're talking about businesses, small businesses, and businesses that we are relying on to increase our supply of housing, we have to make sure that everyone is knowledgeable about this particular impact. And so it would be really helpful to ensure that that's included when we're reviewing the packets, to have all of these impact statements included.
Thank you, Councilmember Sales, and I could not disagree. You are absolutely right. And packets are due. The staff packet is due. We have to publish them for the public 3 business days before the meeting, and we always make a point of checking, to see if the impact statements are ready, and it still is not available. So unfortunately, that's outside of council staff's hand. But it's something we're still,
So who oversees the fiscal impact statements, the preparedness of it?
So Office of Management and OMB provides those. Yes.
So then we need to talk with OMB about their timeliness of getting these statements into the packets.
Councilmember Sales, I'll take the heat on this one. It comes from OMB, there's no question about it.
Yes.
OMB requested from our office and from DPS some information upon which they could base it. It was a little bit complicated because it really isn't an impact in terms of what the additional fees would there. So we tried, and it took some difficulty, but we will have that information for you.
When it comes before the full council?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Thank you. I also recommend the support of the amendment, especially given that we don't have the full packet to change this from the expedited bill to a regular bill. And just want to thank you again for catching this loophole. Thank you all.
With that, we have an amendment that we need to vote on. If I can ask for a motion?
Yes, please.
Can you please say it on the mic?
What would I do without Andrew, my mic man? I'd like to make a motion that we remove the expedited language. Thank you.
Second. Second by Councilmember Sales. All in favor, please raise your hand. The motion passes. And I think we need to vote for the actual bill.
Right. Yeah,
So I need a second.
Second.
Councilmember Sales second. All in favor, please raise your hand. The bill passes. Thank you so much for coming here today. I look forward to seeing you back in full committee session when this is brought up to the full council.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Next, we have, let's see, Expedited Bill 1323, Montgomery County Urban Districts, Friendship Heights Urban District. I would like to welcome Council Vice President Andrew Fritzen. As many know, this is his district, so I wonder if you would like to start, Mr. Fritzen, and then we'll let the panelists to continue.
Well, thank you so much, Madam Chair. It's great to be back here before this committee and really appreciate your work. Congratulations to Councilmember Balcom on your first bill making it through committee, one step closer to full passage. I'm really excited to be here today to talk about the future of Friendship Heights, to take the next step in a series of steps that have been undertaken over the last few years, working together with the business community, with the residents, with the local area communities, and with the executive branch, where we have really stepped up to try to ensure that Friendship Heights could reach its full potential that we know is almost limitless, sitting atop a metro in a very desirable area, but a retail sector that has not achieved what we want it to achieve and what we hope it to achieve, in a community that needs to have more cohesion between the DC side and the Montgomery County side. For the first time ever, despite decades of attempts, we are finally in a position to bring together the District of Columbia and Montgomery County with one entity that crosses over Western Avenue and helps us to create one community. And the benefit is we have business owners and property owners who are asking us to put forward a very modest tax to allow us to set up this entity. So it will be a significant benefit to the community and to Montgomery County and to the region, and one that will not be costing residential taxpayers for the benefits of that, which is really exciting and really positive. Friendship Heights Alliance was formed a little over a year ago to help revitalize Friendship Heights, to ensure that it's a place that meets the needs of residents and businesses, and that it meets the full potential that Friendship Heights has. The bi-jurisdictional effort is really one of its kind, bringing neighborhoods on both sides together, and has already begun its work, and this council has worked together with the District of Columbia to provide the seed funding to help that effort move forward. But we need to take it to the next level. We need to institutionalize it and formalize it and have a sustainable funding model for moving forward, and that's really what this bill helps to do. It mirrors the elements that are being moved forward by Ward 3 Councilmember Matt Fruman in the District of Columbia, and it will allow us to have parity on both sides, where we have a funding mechanism that can work to fund the Friendship Heights Alliance, which will serve both sides of Western Avenue. So I'm just really excited to be at this point, really excited to have worked together with the executive branch, with private entities, with the community to get us to this point. I do want to acknowledge and thank Jad Donahoe, who has really been the business leader who has spearheaded this entire effort from its infancy, to Natalie Avery and everybody at the Friendship Heights Alliance who have really worked hard in figuring out how we can make sure that both sides have parity, so that this is a fair effort that could bring all the business entities and property owners together feeling like they're getting a fair and reasonable deal. And Ken Hartman, who has led the way on behalf of the executive branch and has worn many hats on the decades-long efforts in Friendship Heights, previously at the Regional Services Center, prior to that as the Chief of Staff to my predecessor's predecessor in District 1, Howie Dennis, and so really appreciate that. And I also want to really thank Christine Wellens and Trevor Ashbury, our legislative attorney and in the office of the county attorney. This was a very complicated dynamic to figure out how to have a funding mechanism that works in the context of Montgomery County's code, but also could have parity with DC. And working through that with the legal entities was challenging. So thank you for that. Colleagues, I hope that you will emphatically support this as a key part of moving our economic development forward. Few areas are more important than Friendship Heights to reach their full potential so that the county can reach its full potential. There are 2 amendments that are proposed. I'm supportive of both of them, although there's one tweak that if we get to it, I hope you'll allow me to share. That was a request by the chamber to be more congruent with other urban districts, including Wheaton and Silver Spring, and so hopefully we can get to that. And then there's a technical change recommended by the county attorney, which will help provide a little additional clarity, which I'm supportive of as well. So with that, thank you very much. Really appreciate it, and really excited.
Well, thank you for that introduction. Is Mr. Spada, would you like to start, or Christine?
Thank you very much, Chair Fiona Gonzalez and council members. So this bill 1323, as explained by the lead sponsor, Councilmember Friedson, it was introduced on February 28th, and the public hearing was held on March 14th. This bill, as Councilmember Friedson explained, is a cross-jurisdictional effort to create a funding source for the revitalization of Friendship Heights on both sides of the Maryland-DC border. And here in Montgomery County, it would be creating a new urban district in which an urban district charge would be assessed on a yearly basis to certain of the commercial properties within the designated area, and will go towards the revitalization efforts in a variety of ways. So there are 2, and I would defer to Mr. Hartman-Espada for any other introductory comments. There are 2 potential amendments that I can walk you through at the appropriate time. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Chair Fiona Gonzalez. We appreciate being here. Trevor and I have worked on this bill with Councilmember Friedson, and it's been a productive process working with the business community and the residential community. It's something that's long coming, as Council Vice President Friedson mentioned. We do want to make you aware, and I'm sure we'll be coming back to the Economic Development Committee in the future, because this is one piece of a range of mechanisms we use as a county to help support business districts. I know you're aware of our business district grant program, and we'll come back during the budget to talk about not only the business district grant program, which helped the Alliance move this forward on the Montgomery County side, but also the placemaking district grants that we are getting ready to announce soon, which will be in multiple areas, particularly in the outside of the Bethesda, Chevy Chase greater region. We're looking for smaller business districts to help support and encourage their growth as in this fashion. I know the RESJ report pointed that out, but I look forward to coming back and talking more about how we'll address that.
That sounds great. I look forward to it. Would you like to make any remarks before we get into the amendments? No? Okay, let's get to it.
Okay, great. And also just an apology, I accidentally left Mr. Ashbury off the expected attendees, but he's a very important attendee as he wrote the bill. So thank you for being here. And I'll also note with regard to the impact statements, at the time that the staff packet was submitted, we didn't yet have the economic impact statement. We do have it now. It estimates that there would be a positive economic impact in the county as a result of this bill, and that will be included for you at the time of action if the committee recommends the enactment. So the two potential amendments, one is at page 3 of the staff memorandum, and it's related to the membership of the Friendship Heights Urban Advisory Committee. Each urban district has an advisory committee, and I don't know if Mr. Friedson, did you want to speak to that one?
Thank you, Ms. Rollins, and thank you, Madam Chair. So I just want to make one clarification that I don't think was included in the packet. The request that came and that we heard in the public hearing was to change owner to representative, so it didn't necessarily have to be the owner, which I think is an important clarification. A lot of times on groups like this, it's a representative of the business. It could be a general manager or somebody who actually runs the day-to-day of the business, but not necessarily the person who financially owns the business. I think that's important, particularly for an effort like this. And there was also a request to remove the restriction on being in the district, which would be analogous to Silver Spring and to Wheaton, where the local chamber is recommending somebody. Oftentimes it is somebody in the district, but there are times when it's somebody who's immediately adjacent to the district, which is not uncommon and is a important stakeholder in that. And so I can't propose anything here, but if committee members would be amenable, an amendment that would satisfy the request would be both to change business owner to representative and also delete in the district, so that it would just say one member is a business representative nominated by the Greater Bethesda Chamber of Commerce, and that would be consistent with the other urban districts in the way that it is done.
Before we move the amendment, Council President Glass has a question.
I appreciate the clarification, and so just want to make sure that in the definition, understanding the capacity or limited capacity that business owners might have to participate in setting this up, which is going to be a very time-intensive process, that a representative is an employee of that business owner. Just want to make sure that it's not misconstrued that a representative then can become an additional chamber member or somebody else that is one step further removed from the business owner. If the intent is to have the business owner's voice heard, I would prefer that it be as close to that business owner rather than allow it to become another chamber member or another association type member. I'll ask what the intent is then.
Well, I think it's important to remember that this is a nomination and that ultimately the county executive sends to the council and the council would approve. And so the goal here is to not be overly restrictive in the language that has unintended consequences, but certainly the goal here is to have a business representative that may or may not be the owner or is a person who is working on a day-to-day basis that understands the community's needs, understands their customers and their employees, but the goal here is to be consistent with the other urban districts and not to be overly cumbersome, to allow flexibility. For instance, if there is a business that is located 1 block outside of the district or 2 blocks outside of the district that may work together with the other businesses within the district, the language as was originally drafted, which I drafted it, which was a mistake, would have restricted that from even being a consideration. And so that's the thought process of keeping it to what I was suggesting would be to allow for some level of flexibility so that we're not overly stringent, and understands that there is a nomination and approval process both by the county executive and by ultimately the county council.
Right. I appreciate you elaborating on that. I will just state my concern. I'll support the amendment, but just want to state for the record that my concern of getting further away nominating someone, having someone sit on the board who is removed by 1, 2, maybe even 3 steps from the business owner themselves. I agree with the original thought of having the business owner, and then in changing it to business representative, my understanding of that was recognizing the business owner might be busy doing the business, managing the business, and so it would be an employee or designee thereof, but then if it becomes somebody else further afield, I have caution against that. I've stated it for the record. I'll go support the amendment, but just wanted to express my concern.
I appreciate that point. I think it's an important point. I'm glad that you raised it. My view, just to clarify, is not necessarily that the business owner would be too busy or have other things to do, which is possible, but is the structure of some businesses are such where the person who actually is on the ground doing the work is not necessarily the owner of the business. And so, so I just wanted to make sure that that is a point, because it could be in many cases the general manager, the person who's
an employee,
the day-to-day. Yeah.
I am going to intervene. It's absolutely clear. You made your point. I agree. And with that,
moved.
Need a second?
I'll second, yeah.
Olive.
I'll get it this time. I'll second.
All in favor, please raise your hands. The amendment passed. Can we go to the next one, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The next one, we're on page 4 of the staff memorandum. The potential amendment relates to defining the terms Class 1 property and Class 2 property. Those terms are used in the bill. In Circle 4 of your packet, it's lines 56 to 69 of the bill, where it uses those terms Class 1 and Class 2 properties, and the different classes have different commercial rates assigned to them. And in order to be clear about it, and these are also terms that are used in the companion DC law, but in order to be clear about what we're discussing, the recommended amendment is to add definitions of those terms, and you can see those there on page 4 of the staff memorandum, the proposed definitions.
This is a very technical amendment. So do we need any discussion before we have somebody? No? Okay.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Second by President Glass. Everybody in favor, please raise your what? Oh, raise your hand. The amendment passed. Thank you. I don't think we have more amendments, just to have that clear, right? So, yes, go ahead.
I do have a question. I'm in a different seat, okay? That's my excuse for the microphone. So why expedited?
Sure.
We're looking to be able to levy a tax, this commercial district fee on July 1, and so need to be able to assume it in this year's budget that gets passed, and we'll be following up when this bill passes the council with an amendment to the budget that includes the anticipated revenue and anticipated expenditures out for this urban district.
Great, thank you. And then also just one other question is I know that this is a lot of moving pieces with the Montgomery County piece and the district piece. Is it all coming together at the same time? What's your level of confidence that the DC bid is going to happen when you think it's going to happen?
Thank you. For the record, Jad Donahoe, Chair of the Friendship Heights Alliance. Thank you for asking, Councilmember Malcolm. The DC piece is moving forward at the same time. In their case, it's kind of a petition type model, and the majority of the property owners have already signed up, which is the requirement. So we've already met the requirements within statute for having the petition be valid, and now it is a matter of blocking and tackling.
And I'm assuming that the taxation of the property owners in Montgomery County won't start until the deal is done on both sides, or is it going to move forward as each side independently?
The thought is DC's fiscal year starts 3 months later, but the thought is that both would start in effectively this calendar year.
Thank you.
Councilmember Sells.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to ask a question since we're discussing the makeup of the governing body of this entity. You know, historically, this community hasn't had a very diverse representation. And as we're thinking about the future of Friendship Heights and the diversity of the representatives on the board, how are we thinking about the racial equity of the participation of minority business owners on this urban district body?
I'll start and appreciate the question, Councilmember Sales. And there has been discussion at the GO committee on the and from council members who have reached out to the county exec's office that we need to be more thoughtful in reaching out to our minority community, to our up-county community, which wouldn't be the case here, but the message was received loud and clear that as we recruit for these boards and commissions, and this would be one more county board and committee, that we put diversity as a top priority. So that includes recruitment, seeking out people we know in the business community who bring that diverse perspective and to the residential community, to this committee and other committees. So that would fall under our obligation in the county exec's office to make sure that we're intentional about that recruitment.
All right, thank you for that. And what would so the I guess the recommendation, okay, no, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Vice President Fritzen.
Yeah, I was just going to add, and I appreciate Mr. Hartmann-Spada mentioning this as well, but including the renter as well was a very intentional decision that we made as part of this. Many urban districts that are business levies do not include a renter. They include the property owners and representatives of the property owners. And so the goal here was to make sure that we were being more inclusive in that regard, to ensure that we had more opportunities to be, more intentional about our racial equity goals. So I think it's a really important question. We try to be very intentional, and also the real work is going to be, the real intention of follow-through is going to be when the nominations come forward by the county executive and by the county council, who I have full confidence this council and future councils, this county executive and future council county executives will be intentional about that.
Well, I think it'll come through with the marketing and the further development of that district and how we celebrate and recognize the growing diversity across the community.
Thank you. Well said. Council President Glass.
I think we've agreed on everything for this bill. So before we officially vote to support it, I just want to say thank you to Council Vice President Fritzen and Donahoe and the entire team, and our partners in D.C. Council Vice President Fritzen and I saw Councilmember Furman last week or so, and I know that he was excited about this. And my excitement from it stems from my days as an American University undergrad. And so I was on the D.C. side of Friendship Heights, and not to age myself, but I think it was probably the heyday of that area. I was in awe of that community, and look forward to restoring it to what we know it could be and needs to be, on both sides of Western Avenue. So thank you all for your work on this.
And with that, very exciting work, and I look for a motion for expedited Bill 1323.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please raise your hands. It passes. I look forward to seeing you all for the full council when we vote on this. Next, we have the last item on the agenda. Is actually very exciting, probably the most exciting today. Sorry for Friendship Heights. A briefing from it's called Retail Spaces in County Buildings, but If you know me, you know why this is on the agenda. Thank you so much for coming today, Mr. Greg. Awesome, right? Did I say that right? Okay, also. So the floor is yours.
I'll just quickly tee it off. Yes, the subject matter is retail space in county buildings. The packet on this subject just broadly describes how DGS and the county operates its real estate spaces. DGS essentially has several types of spaces: owned facilities, lease spaces that it leases from the private sector, as well as more specific limited utility spaces such as antennas and things like that. Most of DGS's leases or agreements to third parties are usually nonprofit entities that operate childcare facilities or arts facilities. There are only 2 current agreements that are retail oriented, both of which provide coffee services in libraries. The third space that is a significant size space is the retail space in the Wheaton Park and Planning Headquarters building, which at 11,000 square feet is significantly larger than a coffee shop that is currently operated. So all that's to say is that the county, which does not have in-house expert on retail spaces really, has contracted with JLL, its real estate management expert, to market the space. And I actually have Mr. Osan has provided a brochure that JLL has issued. It's not in the packet, but I will update the packet to make sure it goes in there. I'll just hand this out so people can see exactly how it's being marketed.
Thank you for the introduction.
Good afternoon. Greg Ossen, Department of General Services for the county, and thank you for the opportunity to be here to talk about the Wheaton retail. Mr. Mia's packet is quite comprehensive, and of course he's included the entire lease agreement for this facility, which has a lot of information in it, and I'm sure you read it cover to cover, but there are addendums and merchandising exhibits that relate specifically to this. But in terms of just a little bit of background, and I'm going to work through the discussion questions in order, but in terms of background, the county constructed this building, turned it over to the Parks Department, so the Parks Department actually owns the office tower. The county, through its PLD, retains the parking garage underneath of it. The county now leases the county office suites, several office suites, several floors in the office tower, as well as the retail space. So we built it, turned it over to Parks, then lease it from them. So we are tenants in the building. We have, I think the packet indicates, about 170,000 square feet of space, including the retail. So, and how that came to be is over several years and several discussions. But as Mr. Mia mentioned, the county does not have a lot of commercial retail space. We have just a very little bit, and so as he noted, we did engage our real estate advisor, JLL, specifically their retail brokerage, to represent us and actively market this property, and they've had that since 2019, so pre-COVID, and we'll talk about timing. In terms of the challenges, and again, we delivered or began marketing the availability of the retail back in 2019. So again, pre-COVID, and we did have some initial interest and did receive some feedback. And so these are not necessarily DGS opinions or executive positions or anything along those lines. This is just the anecdotal data that we received back from our brokers in their attempts to market the property. And I want to talk about kind of 3 specific themes. One is the site, the second is incentives, and the third is the timing of all of those things. So specifically the site, obviously the office tower is very prominent. You can see it from miles around. But the retail is a little bit hidden from Georgia and Veers Mill. So especially the retail that runs along Triangle. You can't see it from either of those main roadways. And so from a retail perspective, that is obviously a challenge. The second is the location of the building itself. In the retail world, a lot of the national brands are going to want to locate on the other side of Veers Mill at the Westfield Shopping Center for obvious reasons. There's a lot of foot traffic. That's going to drive a lot of the retail market. And so a lot of the national brands, specifically restaurants and fast casual and those types of things, are already located on the other side of the road. And so as our brokers marketed the property, it just took off a big chunk of the retail segment because they're already located across the street at the Westfield Center. In terms of incentives, as I'm sure all of you are aware and realize that retail tenants typically receive an incentive package. Landlords lure them to retail. It's a very competitive market. Those things might include rent abatement, certainly resources for tenant improvements, money, and other incentives. And when this retail was delivered to the county or by the county and then leased back from Parks, none of those incentive packages were actually included in the Wheaton headquarters CIP project. So we didn't have an immediate pot of money to be able to turn over to our brokers and say, this is the type of incentive that we would allow. And what that causes is a little bit of confusion because it's the chicken and the egg routine, and it relates specifically to timing, and I'll tie this all together hopefully in a nice neat package. But in terms of timing, when's the space going to be available and what are you able to do for me as a retail tenant, right? And both of those things have uncertainty in this particular situation, and I'll explain that in a little bit more detail. We have a lot of layers to go through. So as I said, we don't have a monetary fund or resources available to offer those incentives. So in terms of what the landlord is able to do for the tenant and the broker having those conversations with prospective tenants, the brokers have to come back to someone like me. I have to go to the county executive, and then ultimately we come to the council for appropriation. That can take months, sometimes longer. Maybe it's part of the CIP process, maybe it's not. It can come over as a supplemental. Things can work quickly, but again, it's a process that we have to, and it really disadvantages our brokers in having those initial conversations saying, I'm sure that we can offer you something, I just don't know when it is and when it will arrive. And so that's a key part of this. The second part is when the space is going to be available. And this, and I know that some of the council members may not have a lot of experience with the county's property disposition regulations, but all of these leases have to follow the 11B45, which is the county's property disposition, which means on the executive side of the street, in order for us to move it forward, we have about 90 days of internal administrative processes that we need to follow before we're able to then forward the material terms, as the regs require, to the council for review and approval. And in a situation like this, where you may find a tenant, you may negotiate through a letter of intent the terms of the deal. The executive would then need to send that over to council. You would review it, go through committee, etc., approve, not approve, and then we would have certainty that the executive is able to execute a lease arrangement with that tenant. And so, that process in and of itself, both sides of the street, the executive and legislative branches, takes 6 to 12 months. And so that is a real challenge in the retail market, because the space, just to know that you are going to get a space, this is, you have to build it out and so forth beyond that. So just to understand that you have a deal and that you have resources or incentives associated with that deal, that waiting period could be 6 and more likely 12 months before you have any certainty.
Greg, let me please interrupt you there. Can we formalize this? What you're saying, I get it. Can we formalize this by asking the county executive to perhaps put together a package, an incentive package that can be brought to this committee and then full council, so the money that you're talking about is available right away for when those opportunities arrive. We don't have this back and forth that we need to wait all these months, right. But we need you to work on that formal solution so we can approve it. Wouldn't that make sense on your end to do?
Yeah, so for the purposes of today, and again, we will need to take this information back. We want to be able to just trade information today. And then obviously your questions to me will be, what is the executive prepared to do? What are we doing? And I'm going to get into a little bit of the current and the status. But obviously, to answer your question directly, is of course, something needs to be proposed in order to move it forward, assuming that we want to have retail commercial tenants on the ground floor of the Wheaton headquarters. And so that input will be very important coming from the council so that the executive can be informed in putting together a package. And of course, working with our retail brokers, we have a very good idea of what's going to be needed and what's going to be required in order to attract tenants. That doesn't mean that the tenants are going to somehow, be there immediately, but it's a tool in the toolbox, and we do that. We extend tools to the private market. We just haven't established any for ourselves in this particular case, and obviously that would be one of our recommendations, is to do that.
Perfect. I'm going to let you continue before I...
Sure. And I just wanted to wrap up with kind of what we're doing currently and what we are planning to do in the future. And there's some questions about what are the different options, what else have we looked at. And so we're still actively marketing. We got it out on the market in 2019, and of course COVID hit, and so it was about a year hiatus before we even started thinking about, what is this going to look like when it comes back, and what do we need to do. And so at that point we began to start looking internally. If this is not retail at some point, because it's looking very bleak at the time, we're in the 2020, 2021 range. What other things could we use it for? And I think the merchandising plan, again, there's some language that talks about, if it sits unused for a length of time, Parks does have some standing to come tell us, maybe they want to lease it or sublease it from us, or perhaps they have some other ideas. And so there's some language in your packet that talks about that, and that's as part of the lease agreement. But just to give you some examples, the executive has asked us to look at maybe converting some of the space as just generic or vanilla community use space for community meetings and other gatherings and things that could be used by the community and presumably administered by CUP. We've also looked at its suitability for current CIP projects, and so we've looked at the Wheaton Arts and Cultural Center as an example. Obviously it didn't fit. It would have been an abbreviated program, but it was a site that we had. It was available. And ultimately, we found another site which is in the current CIP, and so we're moving forward with that. But those are the types of things. So we've identified other CIP projects that might or might not be a good fit for this. And then finally, and we do this across the county. It's part of a much wider space strategy that the county executive initiatives is to get out of leased space and into owned space. And certainly after COVID, with the glut of unused or underutilized county space, we've looked at leased facilities that we could potentially move into there. So for an example, we lease space in the Westfield South Tower for the Gilchrist Center. Would that be a good fit for the ground floor retail? Drives some foot traffic, it's engaged, they serve a lot of people so that we have numbers and data associated with that, and would that perhaps be a good fit? So we've looked at all sorts of things, and we'll continue to look at different things. But at the end of the day, whether it's a private commercial tenant or a county user, this is a cold, dark shell and will require resources to build it out at some point. And so that is, to your point, Chair, that is foremost on the as part of the conversation. And I'll hit the pause button there, and happy to respond to any questions.
Thank you so much for that. I will say, I wish honestly that, and I said this when I was in parking planning a long time ago. I wish we had, and I know community members have said it too. One of the most beautiful things that we have about that building is the view that you get when you go all the way to the 14th floor. I don't think there is a place in the county that has that view from that location. I mean, you can see all the way to Virginia. You can see everything. And I always found that was a missed opportunity, because you could, if you go to any of these big cities, you'll always find a landmark, a destination, a key restaurant on the top floor of a key building. That was a missed opportunity. Not that it cannot happen. I mean, if we have the heart to be more creative, we could. I had to say that to you. The second thing is not just about making sure that the space is occupied, but it has to be a destination. It has to be something that people from around the region will come to experience. And I'm not sure. And look, the only marketing that I've seen is those 2 pages that were given to us a few minutes ago. And when I saw Lorian, can you please pass me the other one, that one, the one with the map. Thank you so much. When I saw the one in the back showing the mall, to me that's like the worst side of Wheaton, because you don't want to see all these empty parking lots. We want to go, I'm an urbanist, we want to go away from this. This is not what we should be doing in our marketing strategy. You should highlight the cultural diversity that we have. The metro, yes, I mean, you pointed out here, very tiny. I wish I can have a meeting with your marketing team. It doesn't have to be a formal economic development committee, but this worries me because it's just not attractive. People want to go to places that do not look like this. And we want to redevelop Wheaton. We want to work with the mall to finally redevelop at someday to make it walkable. So folks who go to Holy Cross, which is brand new, it's a brand new center in the mall. It's awesome, but it's so hard to get to. It's really terrible to get to, and it shouldn't be like that. So the vision that we have for Wheaton to be a walkable community with, vibrant places is not given here. And I have a marketing background, and this is a letdown big time, especially if we want to make sure that we're targeting places or companies that will see this place as a destination. So I had to say that to you. I think the biggest thing that we can come out of this meeting will be to have the formal, request, having an appropriation budget just for this and any other place in the county, so it's not just about Wheaton, where something like this is required, but being quick on getting those opportunities that arise is critical if we're serious about making sure that our facilities are occupied effectively. And I'm going to end it there. I know Councilmember Sales has something to say, and then I'll let Council President Glass and then Councilmember Marilyn Balkan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was going to comment on the design as well. When I think about how we market and leverage the assets here in Montgomery County, I want us to think more outside of the box, especially with the innovative design of this particular building and with future developments. I know that the county's Economic Development Corporation has their Be Next marketing campaign, and not sure how new leasing opportunities are working in collaboration with that marketing plan. But I agree, if we're trying to attract a new sector, a new type of business, we have to do a new approach. And I'm not sure if there's more information on the website, but looking at like what Zillow or those other companies have, even some of the small builders, when they're marketing and they're showcasing, and they have the videos and the overhead shots of what they're actually getting, definitely more detail. And I know that we're coming out of the pandemic where the retail market is very shaky, and so I know there's been some hesitation to close on retail spaces from business owners. And so I know when DPS was here last week, we talked about ensuring that the incentive-based programs that are available here were added to their site, and less than 24 hours that information was added, because the county executive just did a one-pager that has all of the state, local, and federal incentive-based programs. The city of Gaithersburg has an excellent template of a toolbox program, and that's something that we have to showcase to our businesses if it's available. It shouldn't be something that's delayed. It should be an immediate incentive package that they can tap into. And so I don't know if you have any updates on any current interest, or is there any interest in the leasing spaces? And I know you have the overall space that's available, but is this just for up to 3 different businesses, or could one entire business? Do you have any more information on how you're conceptualizing the space and the types of partners that you're looking to attract?
So in total, the retail is about 11,500 square feet, and there is a and it's generally about, the math isn't exact, about 5,500 along Triangle, and about 5,500 at the front end cap, kind of facing Reedy Drive. And there's a big difference in the elevation too. There's a drop. There's about a 4-foot drop from the retail along the space along Triangle and that end cap.
Okay.
So it was always kind of envisioned that the end cap would be a restaurant. It's got a hood and duct system, or partial hood and duct system set up for that type of use, with presumably some cafe seating out front and so forth. So I think that's what the vision was during the planning process. And then kind of the ancillary or inline retail along Triangle to create more of a more activity on Triangle. Obviously, the businesses that are there currently suffer from the same things that I outlined earlier, and so to create a little bit more activity on Triangle, of course you have the convenience surface parking on the balance of Lot 13. So that was the thought, but those businesses along Triangle, they could be as small as 1,000 square feet or 2,000 square feet. It could be several different stores along there.
Yeah, as I'm thinking about the types of businesses that would be able to take on these spaces, when you mentioned a restaurant, I'm thinking of them taking away their trash, taking orders, getting their supplies through. And I don't see the traffic pattern for deliveries and for those sorts of things to happen. No one wants to see trash taken where customers are trying to eat or where they're walking. And so what sort of setup has been created to assist with that sort of traffic?
So excellent observations. We had the same, and we've not come up with any solutions or game plans for how that would be addressed. It would really depend on the tenants as they come in, and we need to look at the build out. And I think if I haven't already, I would offer a hard hat tour of the retail space. We'd be happy to have the committee out to walk through it. I know the county executive has done that a few times, but we could do that just to get an appreciation for what it would really take to get some, if not all, of this space up to where it needs to be to actually have tenants and so forth. So we'd be happy to put that together.
Perfect. Okay. And then I want to make sure that, you know, because this is also a very diverse part of our county, we're advertising in multiple languages to attract very diverse businesses. And then I know that there was discussion about a child care facility. Is that still part of the options?
The original child care center is up on the 3rd floor, is being an RFP issued by the Parks Department, and moving forward with that. We did entertain briefly the idea of making some or all of the retail available for that same partnership, to perhaps scale up the child care. It's not a current consideration, and I'm not sure where Park and Planning is on the RFP, but we can double check.
Thank you.
But yes, we did take a look at child care, but because it's up on the 3rd floor, we tried to see if there was some way to partner on that. Didn't work out. Happy to revisit it if it comes up again, though.
Okay, and then one last question about the parking that's available underneath. How many parking spaces does the, what's the capacity?
I don't know off the top of my head. I'll have to circle back and unless you have it. Okay.
There's plenty of parking. I know that.
Yeah, I want to say something like 500 spaces in the garage.
Okay.
But we'll get an exact number for you. And then there's some surface parking on the balance of lot 13.
Okay.
There's plenty of public parking. It's just underground.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that.
Council President Glass.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This conversation is reminding me when I came before the council and sat next to Mr. Ossent and told the council, or he told the council, why the organization I was running at the time, Gandhi Brigade Youth Media, was worthy of receiving a lease in the lower level of the Silver Spring Library. That was a long process. We had to raise nearly $500,000 for that. And my goal at the time, this was in 2017 and 2018, was to spend at least one day in that new space, nearly 2,000 square feet, that would be turned into a youth after-school program, safe space, was to at least spend one day in that space as the executive director, and subsequently I got elected to the county council, and it got built out after I was here. So it is a good space, and appreciate DGS's and Mr. Ossent's work and help with me. And so I say that because I know you are dedicated to this, and I know you do it well. And I know that there are challenges beyond our control. And my broader question, and I appreciate the district council member very much focusing on this, and so I'll broaden it out a little bit more. How many vacant spaces are there in the county in these types of facilities?
County owned? Very little. This might be the only vacant space that we have, certainly of 11,000 square feet. We don't have any vacant space right now.
And that's good to hear, right? And it goes to the point that you are doing your job, and each space is unique, and they pose their own challenges, and the times that we're in as well supersede what we can do or what we are sometimes offering. So I think the attention to detail that my colleagues have referenced with regard to the Wheaton spaces is important, but to know that when we take a step back, our spaces are leased. I go to Cafe. I used to go to Bump and Grind. And I know that there are small businesses that are churning just like small businesses have to. The support that the county provides in these spaces is helpful, but it's not going to make a business be successful. They still have to be entrepreneurial and still have to hustle. And so I think there are other things, right? Clearly that's where the placemaking comes in. We want the surrounding areas to be activated. We want that triangle to have as many events so that whatever businesses come there will get new clients, new patrons. But all in all, I appreciate these programs. I think they are unique. It's another way of co-location within county government. I mean, the Wheaton Rec Center and Library, we talk about that all the time, and we talk about the library and the rec center, but we got Cafe in there too.
If I could, Chair, and just to expand on that, and I appreciate you bringing up some of these examples, because in the case of the Silver Spring Library, during the planning and design of that building, we were planning on having an arts organization in the library building and a coffee shop in the cafe. So we knew what we wanted. It was specifically programmed, designed, and then constructed with those uses in mind. We pivoted obviously with Gandhi and Arts on the Block and Levine, but those were it was always intended as space that would run compatible programs with the library's program, et cetera, et cetera. So very specific destination in mind in terms of what we wanted to see there. This is a little bit different because I believe the background on this, and again, I wasn't heavily involved in the planning and design of this particular project. It was run through DOT and Park and Planning, but I recall that the intent here was to have regular market tenants, right, to drive economic development. This would be an economic development tool to create more activity for the Triangle, and that we would have market tenants, and even our Office of Management and Budget had factored that into the financing proposal. So all that to say this is very different, very unusual. It's not a business that the county is in and used to. We are excellent at creating partnerships with compatible uses. We are very good with our nonprofit partners and contractors who work for and on behalf of the county, and that is certainly a little bit of a different animal in terms of, and Council President noted, his trials in getting through the disposition process and the lease negotiations, and that was for a use that we knew that we wanted, had planned for, and we just had to get through the process and get it approved and then put together an incentive package that worked. And this is really going out and not having anyone actually identified and not issuing an RFP for a partner, but actually just putting it out to the market generally and hoping that we have some interest. And that, we has been, a particular challenge in this particular space. So if that notion changes, then to your point, Mr. Glass, we would not have shortage of users or proposals if we decided to pivot at some point in the future. I'm confident of that. But for this specific market retail tenant, like a restaurant, like other economic development driven retail and uses, has proven it to be a challenge.
And I'll just end by saying, for anyone following this conversation, I think that's the important thing to take away, that the county has been successful in forging these partnerships, working the organizations through the process, making sure they are set up to succeed. And this is the outlier, but we are working extremely hard, and the district council member will not rest until this problem is solved. So thank you.
Hence this hearing right here. I would say, and I'm going to let Councilmember Balcom speak next, but as we cannot leave this room until the four of us agreed that in order for us to help Greg, we need a supplemental to make sure that the money is there, so when those deals come in, you can act quickly. So, Councilmember Balcom.
Thank you. So retail's hard. Retail's hard to fill, right? Retail is always hard. It's even harder right now, coming out of the pandemic. People who had slight margins going in are either out of business or still hanging on by a thread. So I know that it's a really tough market, and so I don't have a marketing background, and you could have the best marketing in the entire world, you're still going to have a problem filling these spaces. So I appreciate the task at hand. So I guess I may have missed this. Are you working with a broker? And how is that going? And is
we are. We've had JLL under contract since before the building was finished, and attempted to do some pre-leasing and get the marketing materials, and that's been in place since 2019. We are in regular contact. They represent us in a number of different capacities, and so I receive regular updates. And as is the case with any sort of these, any proposal submitted to the broker comes to us, and that goes to the executive. And I can tell you there hasn't been a lot. We received, there was obviously a lot of excitement when the building was under construction, and so we did receive a lot of interest initially back in 2019, pre-COVID. We did chase down some letters of intent and initial negotiations, but in each case, I'll reference two in particular. I won't give the names of the businesses, but they were two restaurants interested in relocating, local restaurants there in the Wheaton area, interested in relocating, but they needed $750,000 to build out the restaurant. And they needed that help, and I didn't have that help available.
That's why we need this.
And so
That's why we need a supplemental.
So that and of course, COVID hit soon thereafter and kind of derailed all of the conversations. But that's initially, that's a very powerful thing in terms of being able to attract the right tenants.
And would you say that would be the primary obstacle that the broker is reporting back?
It's money and it's timing, and the two are obviously related. So it's the when would the space be available, and back to my introductory comments, when would the space be available, and what is the landlord willing to do to help me into that space? And not having those types of answers readily available puts our broker at a disadvantage when he's out in the market, or when the team is out in the market talking to different folks. When they go to the ICSC and are shopping this location as well as dozens of others across the region, without having those answers very succinct and knowing exactly what they're able to entice people with, puts them at a competitive disadvantage.
Yeah. And I'm assuming that the budget for build out, it was always assumed that the county would incur those costs for build out.
I don't know what the exact conversations were. I can tell you that it wasn't budgeted, and so whether I can't imagine that that as part of the planning of this project that the folks that were putting the project together for a minute thought that a tenant would be able to come in and afford to build out $1 million restaurant, then operate it at a profit to actually fulfill a 5 or 10 year lease. I mean, I can't imagine that was and that was why it was important, and DGS advocated for hiring outside expertise so that they could explain all of this to our colleagues both here at the legislative branch and the executive branch. But that's the reality. The resources for the build out were not provided as part of the original project. Resources for the retail beyond just base delivery of the cold dark shell was the only thing included in the CIP project.
Yeah.
If I could just jump in, so all the other properties, all the other spaces that are occupied, did the county provide any funding for the build out of those?
Reference Silver Spring Library as an example.
So, I know that one.
Sure.
Yeah.
Share. So the way that it worked with the Silver Spring Library, the county delivered the base building, and that was very explicit with prospective tenants. We wanted to put out an RFP or a call for prospective tenants. Had to be compatible with the library uses, and so we knew the types of businesses that we were attracting, and therefore understood very clearly that these were not, Chipotle and Starbucks with, good credit national tenants. That's not what we were looking for. We were looking for local small businesses and arts organizations, and so that's what we got. We did build out the cafe. We built out the Wheaton Rec and Library Cafe as well. So we basically turnkeyed those cafes for a user to come in and operate it. And for the arts organizations, they operate with just basic common area maintenance, utilities. They don't pay a rent, but the county did not contribute to their build out. So the deal was, if you can raise the money and have the resources to build out your space, which we obviously had them demonstrate during the solicitation, then we will give you a below market deal. And I believe all three were 10-year deals and in good spaces. And as the council president noted, build outs are expensive. And just for the 2,000 square feet that Ghani Brigade occupied, it was $500,000. A restaurant's going to far exceed something like that. And so, and these are just arts organizations. And Arts on the Block, no exception to that. I think theirs was nearly $1 million when it was all said and done, having to pivot during COVID and that sort of thing. So a lot of challenges for these occupants and certainly.
Yeah, so I think that I agree with the chair. The county has to, and the council have to accept that these spaces aren't going to get leased unless, as a landlord, the county provide that. It's not even an amenity. It's a required cost of doing business is the build out. I've negotiated several commercial leases in the past, and there's an assumption going in that the landlord is going to do that build out. So, so that is, we have to do that. I am concerned about the ingress egress for service and how that happens. I think that's, I don't know if that was an oversight or just we would kick the can down the road, but that's going to add an additional cost. So I would suggest that we look at the total space and come up with some kind of estimate for, and of course it's going to be a much different depending on what you're attracting and what the build out's going to be. But I think that there are probably 2 or 3 or 4 scenarios. It's also going to be significantly different if you're leasing half the space or you're chopping this up to 8 times, whatever. But I think that we need to look at the scenarios for the cost of the build out. Eventually, it will be revenue. We'll get revenue from it, the deal. But initially, but I agree that, I mean, one of the things that we've been talking about for a long time is the speed to market. And so I would like to see some type of scenario proposal of what would you need to be able to tell the broker we're ready to go, because even in that scenario it's going to take 6 months or however to build out or whatever. So I would support coming back with that, the dollars of what it's going to cost.
What I think we can do, and that's very helpful, appreciate the guidance. I think we certainly have some numbers and can put more numbers together and represent the different scenarios, and I think accompanying that material would also be, we could put together a couple of options to deal with the regulatory process. I mean, we still have to, by regulatory I don't mean the permitting process, those are all TBD, but in terms of the property disposition, if there is a way for the council to, and I don't know how this would work, but certainly getting that out of the way so that the executive is empowered to execute a lease in a reasonable amount of time when we attract the right tenant and we all agree is the right tenant, that would be a very powerful tool in the toolbox for our brokers to know and to have at the ready and be able to market this a little bit better. So, agreed.
Great, thank you.
And in terms of the supplemental, making sure, yes, that has to be ready. And I'm assuming that my colleagues are in agreement with that. So when do you think, should you come back here with what Councilmember Balcom has stated and the numbers?
I am conspicuously solo today. Mr. Hartman is here behind me for support, but I have a number of executive branch colleagues that would need to be part of the makeup of what you've asked for, and so let us take this back, speak with the executive and the executive team and get briefed, and we'll put together what we think is a good timeline, and we understand the timeliness factor here, and we will not hesitate to get back here as quickly as possible with a proposal, but just need some time to put it together.
Yeah, so I just want to be clear that what I would, with my chair, that I would expect to get a proposal back, not a supplemental. I mean, I think that from a work session perspective, I would think that we.
Our budget office is thanking you for that last comment.
Yeah,
so
okay.
we will certainly put together the proposal. What DGS can do is we can outline the procedure and storyboard this for you. The supplemental will need to be handled by others.
Keep that in mind, because I also heard you saying that money, not having money available, is a problem. I am fully this is a unique property owned by the county, and we have a duty with Wheaton residents who were promised to have an occupied building that will actually create more economic development in that community. So if it requires money in your analysis, I expect that to come here as well. So I am putting it out there.
Understood. Thank you.
I will say that this council, 1 week and 1 day ago, received the county executive's FY24 budget. We are still doing an analysis on it before we even have public hearings, which will begin in about 2 weeks' time. I'll share for my colleagues. These are my first public statement about the budget, and I will simply say I prefer going through the budget than having special appropriations, especially now that we have the budget on our lap. Not forecasting what happens in the budget process, but the statement I'm making is a process-driven statement. So we are now in budget season, and any fiscal matters and priorities that colleagues on the council have, I hope that instead of going through a special appropriation process, they go through the actual budget process. There are 11 of us. I'm just simply stating my prerogative, but I've stated it.
And if you can do this quick enough to get it to us in April, hey, that will be amazing, and we'll be truly grateful. Councilmember Sells, do you have any? No, right? Okay, perfect. With that, if there are no further comments, I truly appreciate your time and being here, and we look forward to seeing you back on this issue. Thank you so much, and we are adjourned.
Construction project. Richfield Road will be closed in both directions on or about June 5th, 2022 from River Road to West